So with year 7 season 1 Climax mission just around the corner, a lot of you guys have been asking me, yo Skills, what build do you plan on using to solo master difficulty on the Climax mission? So I currently have 2 builds. One of the builds has 2 different ways to run it. I'll explain it. And I believe I'll be able to do this with directives and without directives with one of the builds at least. Now we don't know what the Climax mission will be, but based off the global modifiers, you typically can tell what type of enemies you'll have to deal with and what modifiers they'll have. So let's get into the build and show you what I plan on using. So one of the 2 builds I plan on testing out is going to be the Heartbreaker build. And the reason why is because of the bonus armor, the extra damage you get, the survivability you have, and the fact that you can try to run this with a St. Elmo's Engine assault rifle or even the Chameleon assault rifle. Either one of those exotics is going to be perfectly fine for this build, as I've used both of them in the past. And the reason why this build is so good is because the amount of bonus armor you get and the way the Heartbreaker set works. So we are running the Heartbreaker set, and the reason why I like the Heartbreaker set for those harder difficulties is because of the damage and bonus armor you get. So if you think about it, you're gonna get 15% assault rifle damage and 15% LMG damage. The 3-piece, what it's gonna do is give you 15% weapon handling, and what the 4-piece does, it's called Hard Stopper. Headshot supply pulse for 5 seconds. Now weapon hits on pulse enemies add a stack of 1% bonus armor and 1.1% weapon damage to pulse enemies for 50 stacks. And just with a 4-piece, not including the extra bonuses you get from the back or chest, we're getting 50% bonus armor and 55% weapon damage to pulse enemies. So all we need to do is land a headshot, or if you want to run a pulse or a drone, that's up to you. But for me, no pulse is needed. Hit a headshot for 5 seconds, you will pulse them and you'll be able to build that stack. Now we have armor on here, we have crit chance, and then we have 12% protection from elites. Ideally, on my hardcore character, I only had one of these mods, and everything else I just put crit chance and crit damage mods. So if you don't have the protection from elites mods, do not stress about it too much. Now for the chest piece, we went with our 2nd piece of Heartbreaker. This is gonna have armor, crit chance, and protection from elites. Again, if you don't have protection from elites, put crit chance, crit damage. But the reason I went with the chest piece is because now we're gonna increase our bonus armor up to 100%, and then we're gonna increase our weapon damage up to 110%. And that's why this is so good and why a lot of people actually like running the Heartbreaker set, especially for those harder difficulties. For the holster, we're running the improvised holster. The reason why we went with the improvised holster for this is because it comes with the mod slot. The holster is going to be the only piece in the game that allows you to run a mod slot there. And if you have a protection from elites, that means we can stack more protection from elites on this build. We have weapon damage, crit chance, and then protection from elites here. Again, if you guys do not have protection from elites, well then you can put crit damage, crit chance until you get another protection from elites mod. For the knee pads, we went with our 3rd piece of Heartbreaker. This is gonna be armor and critical hit damage. For the gloves, our 4th and final piece of Heartbreaker is gonna be armor and crit chance. And we pair that up with the Memento backpack for weapon damage, armor, skill tier. And then we have protection from elites there. And this talent is gonna be absolutely amazing for those harder difficulties, for soloing those hunters on heroic. Because if you look at it, every time we pick up a trophy, we're gonna be getting 10% extra weapon damage for 10 seconds. We're gonna get 50% bonus armor on top of the bonus armor we're getting from Heartbreaker, and then we're getting 5% skill efficiency. Now our long-term stack is 30% weapon damage, 30% skill efficiency, and 3% armor regen. So this is why this is so good for all of you guys to use, especially if you guys are going to solo any of this content from Battle for Brooklyn or the Hunters. Use the Memento bag. And then for the modifiers, we are running the Assault Link. This is gonna give us that extra damage we need to melt through enemies. You guys wanna run extra padding. That's gonna give us 5% extra protection from elites for each blue core while at tier 5. So when I am at tier 5, you can have up to an additional 25% protection from elites on the build. We also have 25% of your crit chance value is added as crit damage while at tier 5 for firearms. So that's going to be on there. And then we have the best of a kind. While at tier 3 of both firearms and stamina, you gain 2.5% headshot damage for every 100,000 total armor you have. And you guys already saw we're sitting at 1.8 million armor. So that's why we're going to have a ton of extra damage and survivability with this build. We go look at the stats real quick for you guys. We're sitting at 53% crit chance, 84% crit damage, 75% headshot damage. We have that 10% damage sharks out of cover, and then we have 21% health damage. And then for the skills, we are running the Crusader shield. That's gonna give us 4.7 million health on there. That's because we do have a tier 6 shield because we are running 5 blues and 1 yellow. So that allows us to do tier 5. If you guys wanna run a Reviver Hive, you guys can. I have actually fell in love with the smart cover. The smart cover reinforcer is pretty insane to use. If I proc this down and get into cover, I'm getting additional 64% bonus armor when I go into cover. So this is pretty much the cheat code. If you guys put this together, you will never go down. And that is the build right there. Let's get into our second build. So this build can actually be ran two different ways by swapping out the chest and the mask. Now I'm going to be showing you the build I think is going to work best for master difficulty because the enemies are so tanky. But it all starts with the #1 used SMG this season, the Backfire, and the way it works with the modifiers. So on this one, I do have it fully optimized. We have 15% SMG damage, 21% crit chance, and 10% damage targets out of cover. If we look at the talent, Payment of Kind, dealing damage with the enemy also stacks up 2% critical hit damage up to 100 times. That means you could have up to 200% extra critical hit damage on this build, lasting 10 seconds. On reload, it applies a 10-second bleed to yourself, which deals 0.5% armor damage per stack. But we don't have to worry about this because we're gonna have 0 bleed. Now, what I like to use is the ACS. You guys can run any ACS you want if you have the rock and roll. I run this one. It has 0 expertise, shotgun damage, damage to armor, health damage, and then I have preservation, killing the enemy repairs 10% of your armor or 5 seconds. If I get a headshot, that's an additional 10%. Now, this isn't made to kill. This is made to build my stack up. I want to have full stacks with this striker build because that's how I'm going to be putting out max damage. We have 12% weapon handling and 14% reload speed. Now we are running the Striker Battlefield chest piece, and that's going to give us 15% weapon handling. We also going to get 15% rate of fire. Now, the 4-piece for Striker's Gamble give us weapon hits, increase total weapon damage by 0.65, stacks up to 100 times. Now, 1 stack lost per second between 0 and 50, and 2 stacks lost per second between 50 and 100. We are actually going to be doubling that because we're going to increase it by running the chest piece, and what that does is increases max stacks from 100 to 200. So 3 stacks lost per second for between 100 and 200. But with this build and the ACS, we're able to keep up that stack at full stacks a lot. And that's what really matters with this build. We do have armor on this, Hasbro, and then critical chance. The reason why you're going to want to have Hasbro on the pieces is because we want that 100%. For the holster, we went with the Striker holster. We have armor and Hasbro. For our third piece of strikers, we have the knee pads, armor, Hasbro. The Striker Battle Gear gloves, armor, Hasbro. So you're going to have Hasbro on all of the striker pieces. If you look at the backpack, we have the Memento backpack. We have weapon damage, armor, skill tier, and then we have 12% critical hit damage on here. Now, the reason why this is so good is because, remember, we're going to have the short stack, which is going to give us 5% weapon damage, but 60% bonus armor and 5% skill efficiency. But once we build up that 30 stack, what does that do? 30% weapon damage, 30% skill efficiency, and 3% armor regen. We're going to be healing a lot, sitting at 1.9 million armor. Yes, we are a tank with this build. For the mask, we went with the Hollow Man mask. This is going to give us 10% hazard protection. It is the only piece in the Division 2 that has 10% hazard protection as a 1 piece, and that's why it's good. Whether you guys have this piece or you guys have a regular, personally, I really want a regular Yao gear piece, and I would have armor on here. But instead of the health damage, I would love to stack more crit damage. But the health damage isn't bad. But again, armor, health damage, hazard protection, and then critical hit damage mod is what you want to go on there. Now, if you want to run a Yao chest piece instead, so that way you guys can still get the 10% hazard protection, run armor, hazard protection, crit damage, and put a crit damage mod, and then you can run a talent like Obliterate. This actually works better on lower difficulties. It can also work on Legendary too, because it allows you to build those stacks faster with Obliterate. Or if you even want to run Intimidate, as I've seen a lot of people run, as long as you're within those 10 meters, you're going to be hitting harder than Obliterate. Now remember, if you do put the Yao chest piece, that means you need to put a Striker mask. So you got to swap out the 2 pieces. This is the only change you need to do to the build. For the modifiers, we went with Assault Link. The reason why we went with Assault Link is because your firearms attributes is set to tier 5. For every duration of the ability, you gain 5% weapon damage for every non-red core on this build. And that's where we're going to get a ton of extra weapon damage there. Now, attributes are frozen and bonuses are multiplied by 4. And then the passive modifier values are multiplied by 2. Now, the duration on this is going to last 25 seconds and the cooldown is 60. Now, Safety First allows you to stack 7.5% extra hazard protection on your build for each stamina bar, putting us at an additional 37.5% extra hazard protection on this build. You go over here, you have loaded up, you have 25% of your crit chance, value is added to your critical hit damage while at tier 5. So once I proc the active modifier, I will be getting an additional 50% critical hit damage. And then if we go over here, we have best of a kind. While you're at least tier 3 in both firearms and stamina, you gain 2.5% headshot damage for every 100,000 total armor you have. Now, if you do not want to run this because you want to run a little bit more survivability, which I was actually running for some of my gameplay, you guys can go with extra padding, gain 5% protection from elites per blue core. Now, if you look at our stats, we're sitting at 54% crit chance and 84% crit damage. We're gonna have 70% headshot damage, 14% health damage, and it'll come over here. We have 1.8 million, almost 1.9 million. But look at our hazard protection, 100%. What that means is no bleed, no blind, no burn, no desorient, no disrupt, no ensnare, no poison, and no shock. Obviously, we are rocking Pro machine with this build, and I actually love this because of how the season modifiers really allow you to do this. And what I want to show you real quick is, and this, without using our assault link, we're sitting at 284% crit damage. And then when we do use it, we're sitting at 92% crit chance. And that's why this is actually pretty crazy to see how this all works when you have it all working together. This one's easier to put together. This one is a little harder because that chest piece. I will tell you though, this one is great, in my opinion, for like legendary enemies that are very tanky, or even the new missions. It works really good because you can build a stack really quick. You have to use the ACS to build a stack. You should be able to maintain it because of the high rate of fire. This one's a little bit easier to use on lower difficulties because it's easier to keep obliterate stack up, right? And those are my 3 builds I plan on taking into master difficulty solo: the Pro striker build with the Yao chest piece, the Pro striker build with the Yao mask, and the Heartbreaker build with protection from elites. Let me know in the comments what build you plan on using for master difficulty. All right, guys, I'll see you guys in the next one. Nothing but skills is out.